Hey everyone, Keniisu here, and today we'll be doing a video on some of the best tips for winning the early game in Civilization 6. I know many of you recently picked up the game from the Epic Store, and so I wanted to provide some helpful advice for those new players and beginners when it comes to getting ahead of your opponents, and generally some just overall good tips for having a very successful early game. If you find any of the tips in the video helpful, please do share this video around so others can find out about some of these pointers, because I'm sure a lot of people would love to get better at the game themselves. And if by chance you have any questions about any of the tips I present in today's video, please do leave them in the comment section below, because I'm sure me or someone else will get to your comment and help you out. So yeah, with all that being said, let us get started. The first tip I want to mention, I think a lot of players at least get the fundamentals of, is how important settlement locations can really be. Where you start building your first few cities can often set the tone of the game, and especially so on higher difficulties. Sometimes even on a starting location in Deity, you might have to just restart because you're at a loss if you get the wrong location, lacking resources, amenities, or anything like that. Oftentimes the yields and resources near your settlement location where you start off your first city can often be lackluster enough that the AI will be able to steamroll you due to your own lack of available housing, amenities, slowing you down, and honestly, these are things that are avoidable if you choose the right settlement location. One thing you definitely do want to keep note of is your housing and your water sources that are going to be available near your settlement. This is due to the fact that a city without access to water will start off with a housing of 2, which can put some really early limitations on your growth that can be pretty easily avoided if you know how to settle correctly. Now typically a good universal rule is that you don't want to take more than 3 turns settling your city, because that can really put you behind, but you do want to make sure you have access to things like water, because like I said, if you have access to salt water like with the coast, your city will get the 3 housing instead of 2, which you normally get without any water access. And say you get access to fresh water instead of salt water, you actually get access to 5 housing, and this can be found in rivers, lakes, and oasis tiles, so again, it's really not too hard to get access to these housing bonuses that you could otherwise miss out on if you don't settle in the right location. Say you aren't able to find access to fresh water or salt water within your first 3 turns, which is typically unlikely, but can happen, and you actually are opposed to restarting the game. There are solutions, which is building the Aqueduct District. However, the Aqueduct District does have some requirements, which makes it kind of tedious to build, especially if you need that additional housing pretty quickly. It needs to be built near a freshwater source or a mountain, and be adjacent to the city tile as well, so it's really good to just ensure that you have a good water source instead, to avoid the necessity of this district. And say you already have access to freshwater tiles, the Aqueduct District still provides some benefit in the form of +2 housing, so that's another reason you're going to want to have access to a freshwater source. Another notable thing you're going to want to understand is where you're going to want to place your district to maximize their potential in your settlement locations. Now this sounds rather easy, but a lot of people do not know the adjacencies, and sometimes myself I can even forget what they are, so I'm going to actually talk about a few of them. On screen there's an infographic showing you district benefits for adjacency to certain improvement or tile types, but I'll explain further. As you can see, each district has certain benefits for placing them next to a certain thing, which can harbor more benefits if you're able to do so. Easy enough. Going a bit more in depth, we have the Holy Site District, which allows you to gain additional faith from placement near mountains, other districts, or natural wonders, and respectively the Campus District gains adjacency from mountains, rainforests, and other districts as well. These are things you're going to want to keep in mind when planning your city, so in order to have effectively maximized the amount of yields, you can get these districts in the right placement so that you can actually do so. You can actually use things like the map pin that's built into the game, or map pin extension mods like the one I have in the description below and one I'm using on screen right now, but you can use these things to actually pinpoint where you're going to want to place districts ahead of time, so you can actually maximize the amount of potential and you won't forget where your settlement location should be and where the districts are relative to it. Notably in Civilization 6, adjacency is very important, and wonders actually have their own adjacency bonuses, but I cannot go into all of that in today's video, so if you want to see a video on that eventually, let me know in the comments below and I'll try to get to it. But in the meanwhile, there's a Steam guide in the description below that you can read to know about wonder adjacency bonuses, so you can read up a bit more on that. Now we're going to shift gears a bit from settlement locations into something that I think is very important, which is understanding your civilization's pros and cons. So I think it's pretty fairly simple to say that the civilization you choose and a respective leader to a lesser extent is going to be crucial to understanding what your areas of focus will be. But like many things in this game, you're probably going to understand the fundamentals of, but you really don't understand until you read more into it. Many of these civilizations, the leaders gain benefit from certain styles of play, which can be more complicated than others. For example, England's Victoria gains benefit from cities not on the continent of their capital in the form of free units. This basically means that you're going to want to expand your city onto continents separate from your starting one, as it provides some benefits to you for doing so. Another example is the French civilization, which obviously you're going to be wanting to focus on culture victory because they gain benefits, and you're actually going to want to build a lot of wonders as well because their civilization ability grants double tourism from building world wonders, and in addition to this, a benefit to actually producing wonders in the late game. So understanding the pros and cons of a civilization you're playing is very fundamental because a lot of civilizations have untapped potential. For example, the recently released Simon Bolivar seems to be geared towards domination on the surface, but he can be very versatile. The movement benefit that he gains is actually very helpful for a religious victory, a cultural victory, because you can use rock bands and apostles and such like that with quicker movement. It's actually a really versatile ability. Like I said, there's a lot of untapped potential that you can get from these civilizations if you look deeper into their pros and cons. If you really do want to learn more in depth about leaders and all their abilities and such like that, I recommend a YouTuber named Saxy Gamer who has a playlist called Leader Spotlight. I've linked in the description below. Check that out, as it really goes highly in depth into the leader details, and it's a pretty good YouTuber that I recommend you check out for this. Going back on topic though, I do want to say that a lot of civilizations also do have inherent penalties to them. For example, the Maui don't actually have the ability to settle immediately because they start off in the ocean, and for example, the recently released Mayans don't gain housing from freshwater resources. So with these two civilizations, yeah, you do really want to understand whether the pros outweigh the cons for you, and going for whatever particular playstyle or gameplay victory type you want to go for, you want to understand, is your civilization really geared towards that, and if so, what benefits do they receive towards that to really understand how you can best utilize it. So I have to really emphasize understanding the negatives and positives of your civilization and a respective leader. It's very, very important to getting good at the game because you need to understand your civilization the best you possibly can. And my final and probably most important tip, especially on higher difficulties, is know your enemy. Now this seems very simple. Like I said, with a lot of these tips, they are very surface level when you first say them, but with knowing your enemy, I don't mean just like knowing what their civilization ability is or what they're up to. I mean actually understanding where they are in the game. Now a lot of mods help with this. For example, the extended diplomacy ribbon, I linked that in the description below. It's a very useful mod that allows you to keep track of where other civilizations are in the game in terms of their gold, their cities, and a bunch of other things like that. So it's actually really helpful in that respect because you can always keep track of how other civilizations are doing and keep note of that, because again, with your enemies, they can really steamroll you if you're really not keeping an eye on them. In addition to understanding the condition of other civilizations in the game, you do want to keep note of cultural and scientific victory progress, especially if you're going for domination or religion, because oftentimes I've noticed that civilizations really do creep their way up the victory progress while you're not even noticing. So you also want to keep note of that and try to do your best to hamper their actual victory progress, and do this in a way that could probably advance you towards a victory type that they may have been going for. For example, I often buy great works of art, writing, and music from other civilizations to hamper their cultural progress and also hamper other civilizations who may also be going for said victory. The main point you can actually get from this in TLDR is basically that you want to keep note of the status and condition of other civilizations in the game, especially so for domination and military strength, because military strength, if you get behind on it enough, civilizations will see this as a weakness and try to invade you. So I typically try to keep my military strength within range of them if I'm not going for domination victory, to prevent them actually going on any surprise attacks. Anyways, that wraps up my last tip for the video. Hopefully you guys did find this video helpful for beginners or even intermediate players who just didn't know how to do really good in the early game. Like I tried to iterate multiple times throughout the video, these do seem like very simple advice points at first, but these things are often under focused on, and you really do need to understand that a lot of times it can be easy to overlook these things. So you probably do want to take a deeper look at it after this video and probably come back to it here and take some points, from here once in a while. Generally, you just want to practice up on these things. I'm not like a pro player or anything, but I've been practicing the game for a while, so hopefully you guys do learn something from the tips I provided. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.